Thanks everybody for joining back at Gearhead Daily. I am with Mr. Ed Bolian here, who is the fine resident of Atlanta, Georgia, who hosted me down in his place, and I do say I did appreciate having a genuine Waffle House experience, and thankfully we did not witness any sort of domestic situations that we were not hoping for. We don't ever want to see one of those. But
no, I share some previous domestic dispute observances that have happened at Waffle House just to make it feel like a proper experience.
I think there is a certain flavor of that place. I do remember the water raining down on you though. That was you were having to dodge your plate
on a non-raining day.
So that was a lot of fun, and I do appreciate your hospitality. I am originally from Springfield, Missouri, and there is nothing like Southern hospitality, so I do appreciate everything you did for my wife and I. And a lot of people have been giving me comments saying that, my wife at the time, I have to remind people that, yes, we are still together and still married. So I'm getting a hard time about that. But we're here today because we want to talk about kind of, what you're about. You are currently working on a project of VINwiki, which is a app in which people can use to record their VIN numbers in and track progress and kind of track where a car is. And it's been very useful and helpful, and I'll let you talk about that in a second. Let's talk about some of the other things that you've done. You were a sales manager or just kind of salesperson at a Lamborghini in Atlanta, is that right?
Yeah, they call it sales director, but it was a glorified sales position.
Fair enough. You also hold a cannonball record, which is pretty cool. And which is from, New York to San Francisco, is that correct?
LA,
okay. And what was the average time, or average mile per hour, do you remember?
100.3 miles an hour moving, 98 overall.
Okay, that's moving at a pretty good clip for an average. Yeah. And so a lot of people know about those things, and they know that you started a exotic car rental company while you were in college, and a lot of the accolades that you've already done. You've spoken at length about a lot of the things that you've done, and I think it's really cool, and a lot of the stuff that you've done is amazing. I guess my big question, and this is going to be the one that kind of, opens the can of worms, which is, what is the motivating factor behind all of the things that you do? And you might have to, what's the common thread within your life that makes everything you do motivational?
That's interesting. I don't know that I've searched that hard for like a common thread around that connects all the things. I mean, cars are a central theme, but certainly not not central to motivation. There's only so much that a desire for a car or a use of a car could necessarily like draw you towards. I think I like to do things that are sort of off the beaten path, that are interesting in at least some regard and can compel me along the way. I mean, it's always good, I think, to have these goals that sort of transcend your regular existence so that you have something to chase to kind of carry you through the darker or more difficult times in your life, but also that can sort of allow you to, have something to look forward to. And define yourself by. And I think the Cannonball record very much was that. It was this long-term goal, this idea that you could kind of attach yourself to something that has more broad recognition, but also kind of wrap your resume into something that could be defined by maybe even just a single sentence or idea.
And has that worked for you, putting that on your resume?
Probably not. When I left the dealership back in 2015, it was very much on purpose. Like I just did not want to do that anymore, and I quit for my own reasons and just got tired of the hours and the atmosphere. But I'm not sure in terms of the opportunities that I looked for next and the ones that I was considered for or not considered for. I don't necessarily know how much the Cannonball stuff and just the baggage of being Ed.
Sure, you're right.
From some of those things, I definitely ran into some walls that I wasn't expecting, and that I probably didn't feel like deserved to be there, but they were there for sure. So maybe it's not been good thing.
Okay. So when you left the dealership, did you have a plan? Was VINwiki your thing? Was it even on the horizon?
No, not at all. I mean, I don't even know that I thought about encapsulating the ideas that VinWiki was really derived from, like into a thing at
Hmm.
that point. I certainly had no aspiration of being like a technology entrepreneur or doing one of these like user scale web startup things.
Hmm.
That was not on my horizon whatsoever. And certainly, I'm not like a technical guy. I'm not here coding myself or doing any of that stuff. I mean, I have a massive amount of respect, certainly, over
Sure.
the last few years that I've earned for the people that do. But no, it was really based on a few ideas that I had kind of cultivated personally of building a list of cars that I'd owned and making those available through the web, or cultivating and curating the history of all the manual Lamborghini Murcielago
Mhm.
LP640s in the U.S. and stuff that I had done and had success with in terms of discovering interesting information. But no, it was not by any means on the horizon.
Okay. So I think, I have this theory that we all kind of have this thing, and call it a red thread, call it a theme, whatever it is you want to call it, in our lives that either motivates us to do things or not do things, or kind of steers us in a direction, and sometimes it leads us in interesting ways to kind of where we're going or where we're at, and certainly where we've been. If I can give you an example, this is the red thread for me that seems to make most sense is I've always been curious to know how things work. I was the 8-year-old who took apart his Nintendo, and by 10, I'd graduated to the TV, and by 13, 14, I wanted to take apart cars and know how cars work and that sort of thing. And I then got into figuring out what's the most difficult thing on the planet, and that's people. You know, how people work and that sort of thing. Would you say there's anything that kind of flows like that for you that's in your kind of, in the back of your head, kind of always with you at all times?
I think there's an aspect of doing something that seems impossible,
Oh,
doing
okay, sure.
something
Yeah.
that people think can't be done, but also the way you do it, like finding the clever or more abstract way of solving a
Mm-hmm.
problem that most people think is more difficult to solve, and
Mm-hmm.
doing so in a way that might seem logical, but it seems like there's an obstacle. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I've certainly always had a very strange risk tolerance
Mm-hmm.
that was probably not healthy, but worked out. Hadn't caught up to me
Mm-hmm.
just yet. So
Yeah.
that's been a big part of it. Just taking risks financially with debt, with cars, with drives, with people, whatever the case
Mm-hmm.
may be. And I've been very pleased with how those results have worked, but not always in the moment. But
Okay.
it's one of those things that's probably been a part of it.
Okay. So okay, that starts to make sense a little bit about the inner workings going on. What would you say is one of your more you said you like to do the impossible, like to do things that people say possibly can't be done or have already been tried, for example. What would you consider one of your uh, I don't want to say greatest achievement, but one of the ones you're fairly proud of.
Well, things like figuring out a way to get a Lamborghini for free, or the Cannonball record, or building the YouTube audience that we have in the amount of time for the
Mm-hmm.
sake of using it to evangelize a small business concept. Things like that people would look at on the surface and say, that's just not a real thing. That's not someone people do,
Mm-hmm.
and doing it. I really like that. I don't know if I've lived my life with the sensitivities to the stories that could come from the experiences that I've pursued,
Mm-hmm.
but it certainly has manifested in an interesting way through the channel.
And it's been very cool to see. I think I was one of I don't know if I was an early adopter or what, but I do remember year and a half ago, whatever, and there were maybe 30,000 subs at the time. I thought this is an interesting concept, basic from what I do for a living, and like to hear people's stories and how they got to where they are. Um, I'm not a big believer in that people just kind of stumble into things. I do believe that there is more of a calculated risk, and in your situation, you are less risk averse than most people, I think. And starting a company like that in college, especially, would when you're accumulating debt as you're in school.
Right. I think there's an aspect of that. I I'd like to think that VinWiki is a good idea, and I think that there's a lot of directions that it can go. And I think when you look at the goals that you've got and the strategies that you feel you can deploy in order to reach them, there's a deliberate nature that
Mm-hmm.
certainly is required there. There's also a uh, there's the thrill to having to explore and find out whatever the new strategy is, but there's also the challenge in not knowing what's going to be tomorrow
Mm-hmm.
and just stepping out in faith and seeing what happens.
So on the converse side of that, something that you've been particularly proud of, is there anyone you're willing to share that maybe didn't go so well?
Interesting. Um, Not really. There's nothing that really stands out to me as like a bad misstep, because even the things that I've done that didn't work out the ways that I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
have become noticeably like stepping stones in my past to get to where I'm at now. And I'm not saying I'm in some enviable place necessarily or something that people should be jealous of, but I recognize that this has been like a part of it for me and a part of the journey to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's certainly been, you know, cars I should have bought, things I should have done, things
Sure.
that I didn't do, whatever, but not really any big regrets.
Okay. Well, maybe not necessarily regrets in the respect, but maybe learning opportunities or things that, yeah, we've all, I think, we've had setbacks or things that maybe didn't go exactly according to plan, but were still successes, but possibly weren't,
Sure.
100% there. Anything in that realm?
Well, so VinWiki was built really as an idea amongst friends,
Mm-hmm.
and I retained the majority equity stake in the company. It was
Sure.
my brainchild, whatever you want to say, but I didn't necessarily, know the what it took to build the app, and it was
Mm-hmm.
built by friends of mine for equity, and they've helped to maintain it and help make it grow. But it was a lot of us stretching ourselves in a variety of ways. And in October, our database architect sort of fat fingered our database into oblivion
Oh no. Oh
and
no.
deleted the whole thing, the
Yep.
whole app for VinWiki. And
Oh
it's one of
no.
those things that you can't really hide from. Like it was a real bad day,
Yep.
and I was seriously worried he was going to kill himself over it. I mean, it was a tremendous amount, and we lost about 10 million posts in the
Wow.
app.
Wow.
And one of those just inexcusable things that required a series of about 8 or 9 sequential mistakes in order for it to happen,
Mm-hmm.
and was a big deal, obviously. And fortunately, we were able to find a forensics database developer that was
Yep.
able to dig up some of it, little bits and pieces, and put some of the things back together. Most importantly, our table of users. So we
Mm-hmm.
had about 110,000 VinWiki users at that time, and getting their accounts all back was critical. Now, we lost a lot of the posts they made, a lot of pictures, a lot of the things they put in about cars, but fortunately, our audience was extremely resilient,
Yeah.
and we've grown by about 50% from that point, and it's been great.
Oh, that's excellent. I wanted to ask you about cars as kind of a theme. You and I share this concept I think, pretty heavily. We cars have always kind of been there. What cars in and of itself? What would you say? Are they a business tool for you? Are they a passion for you? Is it a means to an end for you? Is it what really is it about cars in general? Because there are people out there who say that the car scene is not what it used to be. I think.
Well, it's probably not, and that's good. I mean, cars are, for me, they're a lens. They're a way I view the world, and they're a marker that you can use to evaluate what the world is today relative to what it was a year ago or 50 years ago. And they're a way that the world has been sort of invited to see my life. And I love that. I love that I can kind of use encounters and experiences with cars as a way to reveal whatever I can about myself, and I'm happy to do that. at the same time, it's kind of like a scoreboard that for me, things that people don't think should be able to be done with cars, like the crazy loans, the crazy deals, or the flips, or the drives, or whatever it is. Cars are a way for me to kind of evaluate if I'm accomplishing whatever goals I've set out for myself.
And along that same line, where would you put yourself as far as, have you achieved everything you want to do? There might be more on the horizon. You seem like a young guy,
Yeah, I'm 33, and that's a challenge. Like I have all the cars I've ever really, really wanted to own. Like there's everybody wants a McLaren F1 or whatever else, but
sure.
Like I've had to kind of face that lately. It really hit me back in 2014 when I bought the first manual LP640, the green car.
Yep.
That I had the car, the one that I always wanted.
Now what?
And of course, I had a massive loan attached to it.
Oh,
so
sure.
The bank owned it, and I got to play with it with a
right.
set arrangement on a monthly basis. But
yeah.
I've had to face that. All right, how badly do I want a Veyron? Because that's always been what kind of motivated me. Was well, I need this car, I want this thing, or whatever it is. But I have what I want. I have the Cannonball car that set the record. I love looking at it in the garage and driving it occasionally when it's not broken, which is some small portion of the time. And
sure,
I enjoy them a lot. But I've done the drives, done the things, had the experiences, and at 33, it's a little bit hard to think about what's next?
Yeah. I've had something very similar where I set out a lot of goals for myself. I was in college, and I actually still have the piece of paper, and I had some goals, and I said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. One of them was to write a book, one of them was to build a car, and there were a number of other ones on there too, and by 29, I had kind of finished everything, and I kind of went, now what? Now what do I do? What do I do with myself? And you've been, maybe you've had the similar situation. You've been going so hard for so long, and you've been pushing yourself, and then kind of you get the thing that you want, and you go, okay, what do I want to do now? What do I want to do? What do I want to, what cars do I want to own? That sort of thing. And, I think I'm in a similar position still, which is, okay, what do I want to do with the rest of my life?
Sure. Yeah. I guess it's a good place to be. I had the same experience. It must have been a few months ago. I was cleaning off an old hard drive, and I came across one of those things that I made about 10 years ago. Of what are your goals in life, and what are you things in it? And I checked them all off, and I pretty much achieved either all of them or a better version of each. Not necessarily knowing that it progressed from those ideas, but it had become something better than I'd really envisioned. And so I definitely can relate to that, and I haven't figured it out yet either.
Well, like you said, it's a good position to be in because you have the opportunity to kind of, you're free to do whatever you want, I think. Yep. And I think at the same time, though, it's scary to think
whole... Because, those were the things that propelled you in the past, and in the absence of them, do we have lethargy and apathy to look forward to?
Well, I'm the kind of personality, I'm not sure lethargy or apathy is really kind of going to set in just yet, but just switch topics just a little bit. You're a married man, like I am, as I've established, still to the same person.
You did it in kind of the Mitch Hedberg way. I don't have a girlfriend, but I know a girl that would be mad to hear me say that.
I'm just going to take a sidestep. I love Mitch Hedberg. One of my favorite comedians. I went to 2 of his concerts, and I went to his tribute concert. And side story, there's a man next to me right over here on my left who was very, very drunk and started heckling Dave Attell. And Dave Attell looks right at me and says, "Nice, come to a tribute concert and heckle people. Nice." And I'm sitting there going, it's him. It's this guy over. Don't look at me, I swear. So if Dave Attell, if you ever see this, it's not me, I promise, for Mitch Hedberg stuff. I love Mitch Hedberg. St. Paul guy, by the way, so.
Is he?
Yeah, he was. And his wife was there. His parents were there. Nick Swartzen's also a St. Paul guy, too. So when he comes into town. That's always fun. But do your kids or family share kind of this love of automotive stuff, or are they kind of, take it or leave it?
I've got a 4-year-old, and he certainly loves his Hot Wheels cars and building crazy tracks and stuff like that. So we have a lot of fun with that together. But I didn't come from a car family. My video tomorrow is actually about the childhood friend that I had that really got me into cars. His dad was a big car enthusiast and was always flipping through different interesting muscle cars and kind of showed us that, like, you can like these cool cars and not lose and potentially make good money owning them, and it was a cool thing to kind of be exposed to as a third party there.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't come by it quite as naturally as maybe it would seem. I don't know.
Okay. Mine kind of still came from that. I like to see how things work, and I like to build things with my hands. And at the end, you have you have nothing over here, and then suddenly you have something, and you turn the key, and off it goes. There's just that thrill for me. And I think mine kind of came out of Legos. I had tons and tons of Legos. So
for me, it's more like you have this interesting thing, and then you did this interesting thing in it or with it.
Yeah.
And you have the story to show for it. And I've enjoyed that. Like, for me, as like I can't sit around detailing a car forever. I don't have the patience or the mechanical acumen in most cases to build it all from the ground up. I can figure out how to do a thing if I need to, and I enjoy that to whatever extent I can in a short period of time, in accommodation of my own attention span. But I don't necessarily. It didn't come from like I want to build a thing to use it. Like I like the solving of the problem. That me is it.
Well, what's interesting is the same theme applies in my situation. It's a constant puzzle. It's a big puzzle. There's something to solve. There's something to constantly figure out. And if my brain is chattering away, then I'm the most happiest when I have a challenge in front of me. And it sounds like you and I kind of share that. Your challenge is doing something somebody said can't be done. And mine is, okay, well, I've got widget A and widget B. How do I feng shui them together so that they can, work together? So there's some commonality there.
I think so. I always describe the Cannonball Gold record of really being the Super Bowl of being me, of being Ed, was using a car in a way that most people wouldn't anticipate, solving a multivariable equation to deal with traffic and accidents and police and the logistics and timing and weather, everything that could thwart such an effort, and achieving some outcome that seems unbelievable, but then when you back through the ways that I was able to do it, that it at least makes sense in terms of plausibility, and it becomes that thing that can sort of add to whatever the definition of being you is.
And so when you did complete it, did you have that moment of, cool, now what? Did you have that feeling too?
Absolutely. Yeah, when I grew up, my dad always loved big things, and the biggest of the things was the dogs we had growing up. We always had English Mastiffs, and the biggest of them was about 230 pounds, this dog. Wow. And he was the biggest, goofiest, clumsiest thing you ever seen. And he would always chase everything. And he'd like play with frogs and try to make them jump, and he'd end up stomping on them, obviously, with the outcome you'd imagine. But he used to chase cats. And one day I walked outside and I heard this very strange cat-like noise. And I rounded the corner and I saw this dog. His name was Caesar, and his eyes were gigantic. And he was very freaked out. And I learned that the noise of this cat was actually coming from Caesar.
Oh.
And he had finally, after years and years of chasing a cat, caught one.
Okay.
And the little kitten was in his mouth.
Oh, no.
I go over there and I pry his jaws open, and this cat bounds out and totally fine. Like, he didn't know he should eat it, swallow it, chew it, spit it out, whatever. He was just frozen in that moment, as was the cat, petrified. And it had that feel to it. Like, I did this thing that I've been chasing for so long. Like, literally, what do I do in the next moment? Much less a year or 10 years from now. Like, what do I do right now? And and it was so cathartic because like there's a lot of things you chase
Mm.
and they don't deliver on it.
Sure.
Like it's not quite as good as you wish it would be. Like
Don't meet
you
your
know,
heroes.
you buy this sports car and you're like, oh, it's cool, but like I kind of did my things in it. I took it to Cars and Coffee, went on a cool drive, but now I might like a different one or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or you know, you meet this hero, you meet this celebrity, and they're not that cool, or they say something stupid, and you're like, he's not that awesome. And
Yeah.
so this wasn't that. Like everything I needed it to be personally, like it was. It felt exactly the way I wanted to feel, and that was a strange place to be. Honestly,
Yeah, it sounds like
I
it.
remember the flight home, and it's one of those things you don't even know how it happened, but somehow Dave, Dan, and myself, my co-driver, my passenger, and me, we all got like an exit row to ourselves, which was good because otherwise we would have been yelling like illegal things we just did in the prior 24 hours across seats to other people. But like they're both just back and forth, like, well, what if this had been bad? What if we had a car that was a little bit faster, had this little thing or whatever?
Yeah.
You know, we could do a little better than 2850, right? And I'm just sitting there like, if my heart beat any slower or I had any less blood pressure, like they would have had to carry me off the plane.
Yeah.
It was just so it.
Yeah. Well, that's good because, you know, like you said, sometimes you get into a situation where you do the thing and you're almost let down by it, but it sounds like you were able to kind of just enjoy the moment while you had the chance.
Yeah, like every time you're a kid and you want this new toy,
Yeah.
and then you get it and you realize it's not as big as it looked on TV, or it doesn't do these things that I thought it was going to do. It doesn't make me feel the way that I thought it was going to make me want to feel, and it wasn't that. Like it was awesome, and it still is. Like it's one of those things that being able to kind of curate the community of people that still care about Cannonball, you know, to use the channel to convey these stories and immortalize some of the tales of Cannonball. I love. It's fun.
Well, Ed, I do want to kind of wrap things up a little bit. I'll give you a chance to kind of, you know, if you want to have any parting words or anything, but I do want to say I did appreciate the hospitality that you gave my wife and I. It was wonderful. We appreciated our time, and you were many people have asked me, is he really as nice as he seems? And the answer is totally yes. Everything lived up to the hype. You can meet Ed Bolian and not be disappointed. To kind of come up with that. So we did really appreciate it. We had a great time. I appreciate your time here talking with me. Any final words you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Be sure to subscribe to Eric's channel. It's a great place to be.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. And I appreciate your time. Thanks for your candor, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Have a good one yourself.